push up like a meat shield for someone to like
Nah, they're not paying
take the
attention.
shots?
We got it.
Okay.
Here we go. That didn't do anything. Fuck me. No, 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 screw you, guy.
Yeah!
Oh, I got it. There we go.
Daily, my hero.
Lesson fire on charge. Lesson fire on charge.
Hey guys, what's going on? It's DaleyGaming here, and today I wanted to give another tips and tricks video on playing Men of War Assault Squad 2 multiplayer. Yet again, I'm not the best player. I have plenty of losses out there, but with over 400 plus hours, I think I have a pretty good idea of, strategies to implement when playing Men of War Assault Squad 2. So, today the topic of discussion is going to be infantry versus tanks. Now, obviously, there are better ways to take out tanks than infantry. Not necessarily better, actually, but there are other ways, such as other tanks, tank destroyers, anti-tank guns, stuff like that. There are a lot of different options you can implement in order to take out a tank, but possibly one of the most cost-effective ways of taking out a tank is with the infantry that the game supplies you that have anti-tank capabilities. So, the first one I wanted to talk about here was AT infantry. AT infantry is my personal favorite with taking out tanks. These Panzerschrecks here are extremely powerful and can take out a tank, even front penetration, which is really impressive. This is an M4A4, so obviously it's just a medium tank, not the heaviest thing ever, but I mean, these guns can take out Tiger tanks if given the right shot, and they can even take out Churchills. I've seen it happen before, although those are tougher tanks and might take a few different hits to take it out. But as you can see, one shot to the side there actually managed to take it out quite nicely, and I just exploded the own guy. So I'm going to just respawn one of these real quick. So, these things are super powerful, and they're super easy to use. They have a really good range. They have a range of about, let's see here, about 35, which is pretty far considering it's about right here. So, yeah, it's about right here. So, I mean, that's a pretty good distance. Obviously, a turret on a tank is going to be able to take you out, but my best strategy for using these is to duck into some sort of a cover here. And this is actually going to work for all of the infantry units here. This is probably your best strategy. But get under some sort of sloping cover, even a wall like this, hide your guy behind that. Wait for the enemy to make a mistake. Don't let your presence be known. Have him coming forward, you wait below here, wait for him to get up, then fire. And this thing has been tracked, it has not died yet. And then you just flank around. And obviously this is in the editor, so it is a lot easier for me when they aren't firing back. And I still haven't killed it, actually. There we go, that got it. So, another tip with the bazooka is you're going to want to hit certain points on the tank. The flank here is probably the most... Let's go over here to this tank and show you. The back right here is probably the most vulnerable part. That's where the engine is. If you can hit that and catch the engine on fire, it'll explode like it did back there, and it will pretty much render it useless for a little while, although it is going to be operable at the machine guns and stuff like that until it does explode or catch fire. Now, the sides are probably your second best option. Right here, this meaty part where there's no slanting armor. That's going to penetrate it really, really nicely and be able to take the tank out. The front, try not to go for the front. That's where most of the machine guns and the main gun are going to be pointing most of the time. You got this little machine gun here. You got a larger machine gun, and if the tank has a machine gun on top. All of those are probably going to be facing front, so try not to go for a frontal assault. But if you're doing what we did before, laying down here, try and make it so the tank's going to move past your guy, and you can shoot it from the side. If it's coming head on and you can't move your guy, then yeah, go for the front. It might be able to take it out. Obviously, that's going to be the hardest to penetrate. That has, obviously, the toughest armor because it is the front. And I'll be right back one sec, guys. Alright, guys, sorry about that. My dog needed to go outside, and I forgot to do it, and I was like, oh shit, that needs to happen. So, either way, we were talking about armor penetration, and the last thing I wanted to say about it was you can track these tanks, you can damage the main gun, and you can damage the turret. Now, those are all very helpful things, but when you're using these infantrymen, you're going to be in such close proximity that doing that is just going to end you getting shot, basically. You know, maybe if you turret damage it, you'll be okay, but there's still going to be other machine guns, there's probably going to be infantry supporting the tank, so your guy's going to end up dying anyway. So really, you're going to want to go for the sides, for the back, for the front, and you're going to want to go for hull damage or hull destroyed. You need the kill shot if you're using these guys. Don't try and go for the main gun, don't try and go for the turret, don't try and go for the tracks, unless you have some other strategy you're trying to implement. But just as a rule of thumb, these guys, I use them as the kill shot. I use them to try and actually destroy the tank as opposed to crippling it. When you're fighting other tanks, which I'm sure I'll do a video of that, then yeah, you're probably going to want to cripple it in some way that gives your tank the advantage. Maybe if you're in a fair fight, maybe if it's a Panzer 4H versus a 76 Sherman, then that's a fairly even fight, so, you know, damaging the main gun or tracking it is going to give you a distinct advantage over your opponent. But if you're using an infantryman, you're at such a disadvantage against a heavily armored vehicle anyway that you're going to want to go for the side shot like this and actually destroy it as opposed to just crippling it for a little while. Although crippling it, don't get me wrong, it can be a good strategy and it can help a lot, especially if you're going to send in a tank to support after. But just in general terms, try and destroy it. Really go for the meaty shots there. So that's the Bazooka Man, my personal favorite. I recommend using him. Pretty cheap, I think it's like 90 MP or something like that, which is a lot cheaper than having to buy an entire tank or something like that. It comes with 2 men, 1 support troop for him, and 1 standard, or 1 bazooka guy. So try and flank around, you know, shift Q him onto the ground, put him on return fire mode, and try and flank around with him. That's very helpful. Try and get him into these grassy knolls. Try and, you know, these little sloping hills are great. Brick walls are great. Putting them into a building, like popping them in here and then running them out, is really good. These are all suggestions for all types of infantry warfare versus tanks. I think that's going to be the best option. So, next guy up is the AT Rifleman. Often mistaken for an AT Infantryman because, I mean, very similar names, and yeah, it's understandable if you confuse them. But the difference is, AT Infantry is good, AT Riflemen are shit. These things are very hard to get kills with. Although they do have more ammo, more shots available to them. But look at that. Oh no, it bounced. Like, these things are garbage. You have to take many shots with them in order to actually hurt it. They're not very good at damaging anything. If we look at the tank, we've shot, I think that was 4 rounds. Nothing. No damage whatsoever. Sometimes you will manage to, you know, decrew it or something like that, but overall, these aren't worth getting. I mean, I think they have a longer range. Oh, whoops, sorry, tank. Let's check that out. I mean, there's obviously going to be some sort of distinct advantage. Yeah, okay, so it does have a longer range. That was about 30. Can still fire at 46. 51. Let's go back until we can't. 61. Alright, so actually it's got a very far range. I had no idea how far this range was. Can still fire at it. Oh, that's a building. Keep going back. Alright, 79. Okay, 80. It's got a range of 80. I mean, that's pretty far away. Obviously, not going to be very effective at that distance, and even at close proximity, it wasn't super effective either. These things, they're not worth getting, I don't think. I've killed stuff with it, don't get me wrong. Some of you guys might disagree with me. And they obviously have a faster reload time than the Bazooka Man, but in all honesty, if you're going to be buying this, just buy the AT Infantry, and I know sometimes it can be very difficult to sneak the AT Infantry up to 35 in order to get the shot off, but honestly, if you're buying this guy, buy something else. I think you could do better. I don't think they're very good. We still haven't managed to kill this tank in, like, I don't know, I've taken like 15 shots at it. Let's bring up this AT infantryman. One shot. Boom. It's gone. And these things, they're fast too, you know? I mean, they're not the fastest unit in the game, but if they're sprinting, they can maneuver around a tank faster than it can move its turret. So, in all honesty, buy the bazooka man over this guy. This guy's kind of shit. Just my suggestion. Obviously, this is my personal opinion, and I'm not the best at the game. You know, people have different playstyles that can get stuff done. And a perfect example of that is the flamethrower unit. I never buy flamethrower infantry just because I suck at them. They have so much potential, though. People can be really good at them. I've seen Sherman use them countless times and be really good with them. But I personally am not. Not only are they good at taking out infantry if you can crawl them close enough, they can also take out tanks. So, I mean, obviously, what is this? A range of 25 is not very good. Infantry is going to mow you down by the time you get to them. So, this is where that tactic I was talking about before comes in handy. Crouch them below something. Wait for the infantry to come up, and then blast them with the flamethrower. Problem is, it's an arc, so it's really hard to kind of get it to fire. And more times than not, your guy's gonna burn to his own fire. It happens all the time. I've seen it happen all the time. So, I mean, flamethrower infantry, it takes a lot of practice. If you're good with them, use them. You know, practice with them. Get used to how they work. It's obviously going to be a tool at your disposal if you're able to actually figure it out and be good with them. But if you're not, you know, maybe try some of the other things before you try this. But we're talking about it in terms of taking out tanks. And really, one of the very few ways you can take out a tank with a flamethrower infantry is the engine. You got to aim for the engine. And you have to spray it pretty well, and then it catches on fire. Then you run your guy away. Usually the hull will bail, or the crew will bail out. The engine will explode, and then sometimes it will result in an explosion like that. And that's really effective, actually. It's a pretty good thing to use. It doesn't take too long, but alright, let's check it out. It takes about a solid 5 seconds to get it burning. And then the crew will usually bail out. Not always, though. So, it's a risk, you know? I've heard people have really good stories, like on the last video, about how, oh, they killed so many people with this. But you have to play it right. You have to make sure there's going to be no infantry, like, waiting for you or whatever. And if there is infantry, turn it around. Use the flamethrower on the infantry. You've got a lot of shots with it. How much do you have? You have a lot, yeah. 48 right now, and I'm sure you probably have about 100, and we're still going, and it's good. You know? It's a very good weapon if you're good with it. It's just a little bit more challenging to take out a tank with it, so I still highly recommend the Bazooka Man. That's my personal preference. I think this guy, if you can make a chokehold, for example, like this area right here, if you're able to line it with infantry and stuff like that, and a tank has to go through the middle, or imagine a city with buildings on either side and the tank has to go through the middle. Toss one of these guys on the side. Tank is driving by, gets to this point, then you dose him with flames, you know? It's all about timing with these infantry units, and it can be very tricky, but it's very doable. And I think it's definitely a weapon you're going to want to be able to utilize well. So this one, I would say not as good as AT infantry, but still very useful. Obviously better than the AT rifle, you know how I feel about that. So, final thing I want to bring up is SMG infantry, or just your standard infantry. But SMG infantry in particular, they come with AT grenades. Some other infantrymen also have AT grenades, but SMG infantry have them every time. So they're really cheap. It's like 3 MP or something like that to spawn in one SMG infantryman. Honestly, just like the flamethrower guy, line them up where you're going to be able to have tanks roll by you, and then you just toss it. And it's not a sure kill every time. This is obviously really nice because you can take out many tanks with many SMG infantry because they're so cheap and they are able to do a lot of damage with their little AT grenades. And you know, obviously you're gonna get these with your squads anyway, so it's not like you have to go out of your way to buy them, although sometimes I do personally, just because riflemen don't have these AT grenades, so I want more AT grenades on the field in case of emergency, in case tanks decide to blitz me and I want to throw something at it. These are very good. You're gonna have to be wary of them if you are using a tank yourself. Don't get too close to infantry that you think might be SMG infantry, or they're just gonna toss these at you, and it can do a lot of damage. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll bounce, but more often than not, they do hit and they do a lot of damage. And that's a really good thing, in all honesty. So I mean, these guys obviously very good, but they aren't specifically used for taking out tanks like these guys are. But just something you should know: SMG infantry, they're valuable against tanks. Try and save them. Try and use them appropriately, you know? Also, those AT grenades, they can be used against infantry. If you're all out of AP grenades, just toss one of those. But they do come with 2 AP grenades, so SMG infantry is a personal favorite of mine because you get so much shit with them. That being said, we are going to move on to the final point about infantry against tanks. So, tanks, you've probably seen me do this a lot, get tracked, or they get just hull damaged or whatever, and you're not able to use them, you're not able to use the main gun, something like that, you're defenseless. Well, go ahead and hold on to X, take a tank crew or an infantryman that's near the tank, run up to it. Look at this, there's a little dynamite in here. That is amazing. This shit is awesome. You're just going to want to take the dynamite, go down here, click, put it in your infantryman's hand, hold control so you're direct controlling him. And, alright, let's say, oh god, the enemy tank is bearing down on my tank, which has been main gun and tracked. So I want to save my tank. I need to get my guy repairing it, you know. So I get a guy out and he's repairing whatever, that crap. But this tank is still bearing down on us. It's probably a matter of time until he's able to flank us and pin us. So we send our guy out here with his dynamite. It's only got a range of 7. That's a problem. It also has a 7-second fuse. Also a problem. But what it lacks in capabilities that way makes up for a massive freaking explosion that will pretty much demolish anything in its path. These things are great against tanks, obviously. One strategy I like to implement is, well, obviously you can just sort of try and anticipate where the tank's going to be. So you take out your dynamite, say the tank's back here, it's rolling forward, you toss your dynamite right here, hopefully it rolls over it when the countdown goes down. If you don't want to risk that, hold down the fuse when you're direct controlling and run up to the tank. So here's the tank, run up to it with the fuse held, and he will explode right next to the tank. You'll lose your man, but, I mean, it's probably going to be worth it. And he just flew over here and died. Poor dude. Mark Perry. Yeah, these are just kind of the tips I've got for you in terms of infantry. I'm probably forgetting some infantry-based tactics that you can use. Obviously, you can pick up AT guns and stuff off the ground if you find them, stuff like that. But in all honesty, this stuff is if you don't want to have to buy a tank, or you don't have enough money to buy a tank, you need a quick solution to an enemy problem. These are ways to do it. These are ways to eliminate tanks. Obviously, I was using an M4A4, which doesn't have the strongest armor, but I just sort of thought it was a nice medium between light and heavy tanks, and sort of standard. You're going to see a lot of these on the battlefield against noobs. I don't use them very often, but like, you might see 76 Shermans as well, which all of these strategies should work against that also. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Right now, Men of War Assault Squad 2 is like $6 on the Steam store if you want to go buy it. Highly recommend it. Let me know if you guys want to see more of these tips and tricks videos. I'll be sure to do more if you do. And thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Feel my